Thanks, man. All right, good morning. Thanks, Tom, for the intro. I was going to share a little bit about myself, but he really nailed it. Hello? Is that better? Yes? Thumbs up? All right, thanks. Good morning again. Thanks, Tom, for the introduction. Again, my name is Jeff Plumlee. I'm from Merric, Millwork and Seating in O'Fallon, Missouri. So what does Merric do? It's kind of a smaller company, but what we do is provide nationwide service to the commercial construction industry, custom design services, fabrication, and all of our manufacturing. It's all done here in St. Louis. So we service the entire country. A lot of our work would be in hotels, hospitality, restaurants. You can see some of the work that we have completed across the United States. So that's just a little bit about myself. So, sorry, let me find the clicker. All right, so hopping into it. So where did all the employees go? And as Tom and I talked about this back in November, it was like, hey, if you want to, here's a topic that's really kind of come up a few times, would you like to jump into that one? I'm like, well, I'm struggling with the same thing. Anybody else? Show of hands. It's tough. And so I thought I knew a lot, right, when I started to research this, and I kind of quickly figured out, I was like, I didn't know the whole story. So, everybody has kind of seen or been a part of or been in these kind of images that are up here. And I would say the pandemic for many of us was certainly a trying time, something that I really hope is nothing I have to go through again in my career. I'll quickly kind of share my story as it relates to COVID. Everybody has one. So who remembers March of 2020, right? So in March of 2020, when this was really kind of going down, I was in Cancun. Best place to be as the pandemic is starting, and on vacation for spring break, and trying to figure out how are we going to get back home, because they were starting to shut down borders and shut down flights. And I can see some of you nodding your head like, oh gosh, yeah, it's all coming back to me right now. So I got back to work. At the time, I was the general manager of a medical device manufacturing company in Fenton, Missouri called NDX Keller. So we're a dental laboratory. And at the time, nationwide supplier, we were processing, we would process dental prosthetics for doctors and dentists across the United States. So at the time, we were processing cases for about 3,000 patients a week. And on Monday, when I got back to work after spring break, we were processing 3,000 cases. By Friday, we were processing about 300 cases. It went down that fast, and I think you can all relate to kind of how everything shut down. People were worried about, am I an essential worker? Do I come to work today? What do I do? And by the end of that week, we really had, we had about this many people at work, and we had to kind of quickly shut that down and send people home. People were scared. We didn't really know what to do, so we had to furlough 145 employees in 2 days. I'm sure many of you can relate. A lot of tears, a lot of fear, a lot of things kind of going on, but kind of rallied the leadership team and said, hey, we're sending a lot of people home into unknown places and back to their families, and maybe they'll all get along together while they're home, but let's call and check in on them once a week just to let them know what's going on here, but then also check on them. Through that process, we were able to navigate all of the workplace restrictions, social distancing, plexiglass up between workbenches, and all of the disinfecting that you can imagine would go on. By August of 2020, we were able to bring back 100% of those employees, which was great. It's great to see all the faces back in the workplace. But again, trying to navigate through what we were doing. And through that time, we found a lot of different ways to be able to service our customers, provide them, send them the excess PPE that we had for 200 people that we didn't now need. We were also digital at the time, so we had 3D printers. We were making face masks and face shield parts and sending them out to our customers. So anyway, just a little bit about my story as it went through COVID. Anyway, kind of transition into the maybe bigger question. So let me get to my next slide here. So following my own professional experience with this through COVID, basically winding down an operation and then bringing it back up, was both a rewarding experience, but also super stressful, trying to get through that. So that really is until we got to 2021. And I think by the time that we got to the end of 2020, there wasn't a better Happy New Year than 2021. Because I thought, gosh, if I can just get through this year and turn the calendar, 2021 is going to be great. I think there's, in the data you'll kind of see, it's a good story of some recovery for sure, and I think we all experienced that. But then as it started to kind of pick up some momentum, many of us kind of started to see the talent pool in and around us start changing, right? I think we saw wages started to change, and in many ways, wages were going up because there's just a different shift in the environment. So as we kind of go through the data that we'll see, the data is really kind of pieces that I've taken from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And if anybody's seen the latest jobs report, it's some good news, but there's just some other things in here that I want to share. So let's see if we can get some answers. And in the data, I kind of went through unemployment, which I would say today looks really good. Also, there's another piece that I've kind of found is labor force participation. Not sure who's familiar with that piece, but that was really pretty enlightening. It's been in the news quite a bit lately. The third one that may not be as prevalent, it's starting to come up a little bit more now, is really the working population. So let's walk through these just kind of one at a time. So unemployment. So who read the latest jobs report? Excited? It's good? I mean, kind of what you hear on the news and what you see of what comes out of that sounds pretty promising. Good news is we are creating more jobs. Good news is that unemployment is now at 3.5%. That's really good. The counter to that is right now they've also said that the number of jobs per unemployed person is getting pretty high. So right now, the latest jobs report has that number at 1.7. So 1.7 jobs for every unemployed person who's out there today. So digging a little bit deeper into this one, so during that same period, there's a little bit of different trend happening in the civilian labor force participation rate, which is a measure of those people who are employed and who are looking for work as a percentage of the population and the working population. So that's the working population between age 15 and 64. And for most of us, it's a pretty big aggregate number, and you kind of look at it and you think the percentage is pretty low. There's also a huge age in there between 15 and 18, 19, 20. A lot of that population is just not employed. They're just not. So it does skew the number, but it's kind of been the trend. You can see that since the recession in maybe what you'd call 08, is that number has been dropping. And it had a little bit of a rebound. You can see, since 2018. Maybe we're creating more jobs, or we have better employment, whatever that looks like. But what you can also see is that through COVID and the pandemic, that number dipped pretty low. And at one point it got down to about 60.2, 60.3% off of 63.3. And you might say, well, gosh, Jeff, it's only like 3%. Well, anybody do some math for me real quick? 3% on, 200 million people is what? Anyone? Yeah. Well, whatever that is, 6 million people. That's a lot. That's a lot of people who are not actively employed. So you can also see it's a pretty major dip, and then it kind of comes right back up and starts to self-correct. But what you also see is that pretty big dip didn't come all the way back up. So fast forward kind of to today, right now that number looks like 62.2. And so we're still, a little over a percent off of kind of where we've been pre-pandemic. So from that standpoint, that's really saying that there's 1.5, maybe 2 million people who are not actively employed. So, I'll open this up a little bit. Who's aware of this piece here? And I'll ask, where'd everybody go? This is really kind of a big one. So anybody know?
Some of the older workers, 55 and 64, they dropped out of the work. Really, that's you take those older folks out.
Yeah. Right. Those who are maybe closer to retirement, or maybe who worked through retirement, retired. Yeah, so they came out.
Working families, one of them may have had to stay home because daycares or things closed, or
Yeah.
a shift in pay, and or started working for themselves.
Yeah. People staying home. Post-pandemic, even going to restaurants, childcare, other services like that, we just didn't have enough employees to be able to fill it. So some people were just choosing to stay home. And at the time, supply and demand, how that works with that, those services became then obviously more expensive. Larry?
I was going to say the same thing, but another component of that too is a lot of grandparents who were working and didn't have to anymore stopped to provide that child care. Because I think my wife has about 8 friends that just said, you know what, we don't want to get sick, our kids need help, so we're done.
Right. Yep. Yes, that's another component of the same thing. But I think it's taken that type of approach, maybe doing something that's a little outside of the box or something they wouldn't have normally wanted to do, but they, out of necessity have done that. Another one I think is that people had, some time at home. They were either furloughed or laid off, and kind of went through a period of maybe rediscovery of maybe I'm not on the right bus, or I'm not in the right seat, or maybe I should do something different, and chose to follow a passion to do something that's maybe a little bit more independent, or start a business, or just do something independent on their own. So did see a lot of people leaving the workforce, and you can kind of see from the graph, like this is updated through kind of the end of the year. It's really not changing. You kind of see it dipping around in there, and we may see some of that come back, but I don't know. You're going to either have to find people who have taken some of those avenues. I don't think we're going to probably get people who decided to retire, given our economy and given what businesses look like today is a little bit different. I don't know that we're going to get them to come back. So we have to kind of think ahead, and what might that look like. So if we're wondering, is this situation going to get better? And if it's going to get better, what's going to help that? And if we go back to that working population, yeah, better? All right. Thanks, Tom. I feel like this thing is kind of heavy. Anyway, sorry. Any coffee yet, Tom?
No coffee yet?
No. All right. Well, I'll do my best to keep them awake. All right. So if we're wondering if this is going to get better, we have to kind of take a look at the population that's really coming of age, if you will. So kind of a U.S. Census puts out some data that really gives us a little bit of a look into the future. And what's the population that's going to be coming into the working age? And is it going to be enough to replace those who are leaving the working population? And the answer is no. I don't know if any of you have kind of heard a little bit of this in the news. You do have to kind of dig around a little bit to find some reports on this. But I got this data from a friend of mine, and it was really kind of startling. So on average, since the 1950s, here are the numbers. On average, since the 1950s, the population has added about 20 million people to that working population every 10 years, which keeps replenishing, right? And our economy grows and our GDP grows and everything we're doing in business continues to grow, so you need it. You need to keep adding those people. Right now, what the trend is looking like is that in the next 20 years, not 10, we'll add 5. So as the guy that I met for breakfast told me, he was like, so you and I'll say to all of you and myself, this is something we'll be wrestling with for most of the rest of our collective careers, right? I didn't want this to be a bummer of a happy New Year's Eve, but I do think that it was really kind of an interesting piece. And you can see about 2020, really this is kind of perfect storm. So we hit the pandemic, and then this phenomenon of the working population that's going to be coming of age is really kind of hitting. So, you know, you might be wondering, as we reflect on the data and we start to think about, you know, what's been happening, then this other phenomenon that happened just last year. And Anthony Klotz, who's an economist from Texas A&M, kind of coined this term for everyone, and it kind of made social media and the news, and it was called the Great Resignation. Well, I mean, I think he was just kind of onto something, and he started this in maybe spring of 2021, and he was talking to some colleagues and getting some reports from people about what was going on in the workforce. And what he was starting to find and hear was some trends of people who were just burnt out, is kind of what I would say. But, you know, cause of the Great Resignation, and anybody who was impacted by it. Yeah, me too. I think this really impacted just about every business. And when it hit ours, man, it was a little crazy. Couldn't really slow it down. But, you know, there was causes that he really kind of pointed out here was the push to return to work. If any of you were working remotely or furloughed or whatever that might look like during the pandemic, and then coming back, and or had employees who were out and trying to bring them back, that push to bring people back forced some of them to say, nah, I'm out, right? That was one. There was a pause on resignations. So I think throughout the pandemic, you see that, again, the spike in 2020, when really I think everybody going through the pandemic kind of just put everything on hold. A lot of uncertainty, not really sure what the future is going to bring. And at the same time, if you kind of remember summer, fall, winter of 2020, kind of the tagline of every business is that we're all in this together, right? We got to band together and kind of get through this thing. And really, you know, at the time, kind of brought a lot of people together. People were really kind of watching each other's backs, doing everything they could to kind of keep yourself safe, flexible with schedules, hybrid, you know, remote, those kinds of things, so it worked. Then there's another kind of piece of the, a sector of employees that were just burnt out. And most of those people were frontline workers. So those people working in hospitals, people who were working in jobs that cannot be done remote, right? So if you had to go to work every day, I'm getting a little burnt out because all my buddies are sitting home on the couch. So some might say. And the last was really a shift in work-life balance. And I don't think we've ever had, at least not in my career, ever had this much of a disruption in the workplace to be able to take people out of their workplace long enough for them to start to reflect on, maybe there's a better way. And maybe I should be thinking about, is there something else that I should be doing? I don't mind working from home. Hey, if I work from home, I can watch the kids and get stuff done. As interesting as those things might sound like, from here then, all right, well, a lot of that doesn't sound great. So what do you suggest we do in 2023? Going through that myself, we had to really rethink as a leadership team, what are we doing when it comes to labor? And how are we rethinking our approach to our leadership and employee retention, creating a career path for people, building in some of those intangible things within our business that could really drive keeping the people that we have. I would say the impacts in the trend on population, the current trend on labor force participation are going to really kind of create a need for us to focus on the organization that we have today and the people who are there, and how do we figure out overall, how do you retain them? I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but if you can retain, promote, develop, create engagement, however you do it, I think that's going to be a real key in 2023. So, some of you may ask, so what about technology, right? What about automation? And what about AI? What about, other things that are buzzy type of things that we've all come to depend on, digital transformations, other software services that can help us do our jobs better? Absolutely. I really do feel like, and I didn't want to leave that out of this as like, all right, we don't need to pay attention to the other things that are going on around us. The Merric Millwork, we're looking at a new ERP system for 2023. We're looking at some new reporting features for 2023. We're also looking at some other AI development software that can help our employees do what they're doing better in 2023. I think technology is going to continue. What I think there's also going to be a shift in 2023 is the use of technology to make the employees that you have to really focus on the employees. I think you're going to see technology that's going to go really more to the employee to help them be more productive. The reason I say that is the Great Resignation is also a bit of a great reshuffling. And people are in different industries now. We've hired people who have absolutely no experience in project management in the construction industry. They're coming from swimming pools or some other industry is really unrelated, but they're looking for a change. So I think we're going to continue to see more of that. So as automation continues, I think you're going to see the automation really going towards trying to help us do our jobs more effectively. So if we hop into a couple of these, couple of areas I think are really going to be critical for 2023, leadership and employee retention. I'm going to touch on these. Leadership in 2023, according to Forbes, is really going to look like these three things that are up there are going to be really important. So coaching and living values. I spent all day yesterday, if my voice sounds a little drained, spent all day yesterday rolling out our 2023 strategic plan to 3 different groups yesterday trying to get through it. So we have multiple shifts in our factory, so but we did get through it. Coaching and living your core values. So, and as I told our team yesterday, like our core values at Merric are quality, integrity. I'm going to miss them now. Quality, integrity, empowerment, and holy cow, what's the 4th one? Geez, I did this 3 times yesterday. I'm at a loss. Teamwork, sorry. I knew it would come to me. I told our team, I was like, those core values have to be a reflection of who we are. They have to be in our DNA. They have to be, as a leader, I can't walk around talking about I. I can't talk about jeopardizing quality. I have to live those. And I think if you can get your employees to live those too, you're doing the right things. Reducing frustrations. At a time where you're short on labor, you don't have as much help in the office as you want, you may not have it in the field, it causes frustration. I know that it does for my team. It probably does for yours. You're a little short-handed, trying to do a lot more with less. Again, it's back to finding solutions and reducing frustrations. And hiring for attitude. I thought it was interesting that Forbes kind of put that in there, to hire for attitude. I've always felt like you want to hire for fit. You want to hire for competency and the other things, you really do. But instead, hire for attitude. Because I think of the first 2, you have to get people who are going to align and work hard and want to stay. So employee retention. This is a really big one for me. I've throughout 2021 and early 22 did a lot around retention. So I don't know if any of you are a fan of Gallup. I really am. So Gallup is just a big employee engagement survey type of company that can help you with engagement surveys. But there are a lot of companies, even in St. Louis, that can help you do that. I'd suggest that any type of engagement survey that you can get or get going for your organization will pay huge dividends in 2023. Within those are going to start to find what I call really satisfiers and motivators for your employees to be able to give you some kind of feedback. Because whatever you do, because I've done it, I'll put together an employee forum and I'll have the cross-functional teams come in and kind of give me some feedback. All right, guys, so what are we doing well? Everything's great, boss. Okay. What about, okay, so quick refreshment announcement. Tom's telling me that there's coffee here. So feel free, if you, I hope I'm not boring you to death, but feel free if you want to hop up and grab a cup of coffee, feel free. There's already a line for me. So what are those satisfiers and motivators? And we could throw some out, but these are the things your employees will tell you, like, do they feel like they have the right tools and resources at work? Pretty simple things. Do they have a best friend at work? Do they feel like they fit into your culture at work? Do they feel like the job that I'm in today, am I in the right job? Am I being recognized for what I do well? What's the pay and compensation look like? Is the company flexible? Is it offering any type of hybrid or flexible type working solutions? Those things are really going to be geared towards finding solutions within your company and within your team that you can start to work on now. I've certainly, the frustration side from a leadership is you want to kind of fix all the things that are around recruiting and get people in. I would suggest work on the team. So creating a career path. So what does that look like for everyone? And I think most would say, yeah, we try to do that. I think has to be a focus on trying to do more of that. And I'll tell you why. If you already if you have within your organization now, you feel like I have the people who fit, I have the people who are here every day. They understand if it's, at Merric, I'd say, do the people there understand the Merric way? They understand our systems. They understand the crazy business lingo that goes on there. You have those people at your organization now, right? So if you do, the best thing you can do is really, as a team, evaluate those people who are there, and everybody say, I can always start to pick out those high potential people. Yes? So if I look around the organization today, well, hey, Johnny seems to be really ambitious, and he has a lot of initiative, brings up good ideas, but he's just in this role. Well, what can we do to promote Johnny? Or somebody that has really good natural leadership ability, but they're not a leader. Promote them. Guys, I'm telling you, go have the conversations. I think it's well worth your while to provide that. If you have and offer any type of professional development today, great. You're definitely ahead of the curve. Keep doing it. I think people are going to want and yearn for more development this year than they will ever before. And part of the reason for, I think some of that will also be, as I'm evaluating 5 companies today that I could go work for, if the companies that I evaluate, I can tell in the interview process, and I can tell the feedback that I'm getting from people that I talk to there, that they're doing some of this stuff, versus the other company that I might be interviewing with who's not doing it. Who do you want to go work for? It comes back to kind of the talent acquisition side of it. So last, and I really kind of bring it up as last, and I'm not necessarily saying that you should do this in this order, but I do feel like with the right leadership and the right type of retention strategy, the right type of engagement in your organization, and taking a stance with professional development and providing a career path for people, talent acquisition gets a little easier. And here's why. At least this is my opinion with it. If you're able to do some of those things, provide the right leadership, retention, and promotion and development, it kind of changes the talent acquisition piece of it. And I am by no means a talent acquisition expert, so please don't ask me those questions afterwards. But I do believe in organizational health, and I think if I'm starting to attract talent that can come in at more of a junior level, more of a fundamental level to my organization, and show them a career path, that may help you in 2023. Trying to find those people who have all the boxes that you can tick from a skill level, from a technical level, from a professional level in 2023 is definitely going to be harder. There's just going to be a lot more competition for those folks. Last, and I kind of put it up here, so from a talent acquisition standpoint, be creative. I think there's a lot of very traditional ways to look for talent. There's Indeed or LinkedIn, or you have a recruiter who's doing some of that for you. Some of what I've discovered in throughout my career have been some, I would say, even kind of by mistake. I wasn't necessarily looking for it at the time, but I had a need that came up, or we had an opportunity that came up where we could use a different type of talent. And these are just a few creative solutions that I have experience with that I feel like have been helpful for me in my career. So Fort Zumwalt High School is a high school near in O'Fallon, and it's near our company. Fort Zumwalt High School has partnered with community business leaders to build an apprenticeship program at the high school for those high school students who are saying, I don't know that college is going to be for me, and they can take some required courses at the high school to be able to get themselves into an apprenticeship program that they can complete while they're in high school and leave high school with a certificate that says, I'm either an electrician, I'm a journeyman electrician, I'm a journeyman cabinet maker. I think there's some other light mechanical skills that are involved. But there are creative solutions like this that are going to start creating a path, for some young people coming in. Local technical schools, North and South Tech, I don't know if any of you are familiar with those, but they offer a lot of trades, some technical, professional type of training for again, young people. Those two partner with all the high schools, draw in students from them. Interesting piece about North and South Tech. I'm in the manufacturing sector. We don't work with those two schools right now, but most of the kids who are going through North and South Tech, by the time they're a senior, probably already have a job. And if any of you have partnered with them, you know what I mean. Oh, I'm going to go there one night and visit with the kids and see if I can figure out what's going on. Those kids, most of them are already spoken for. It's a really cool program. Sheltered workshops. So I know of half a dozen of these throughout St. Louis who provide light manufacturing solutions. These are organizations that work with the disabled population to provide those solutions on site at their location. Several of them will also partner with you as an organization to bring those folks to you. Those can be consolidation, light assembly, light de-assembly and packaging, if you will. Mailings, they can do all kinds of stuff. There's another organization or collaborative going on right now in St. Louis, just because a lot of us are going through what we are, and it's a group called STL Rethinks. So they are working with, really, I would say hidden pockets of talent within St. Louis to promote different groups in St. Louis. And it's fascinating, some of the work that they've done. So I would say for any of those, or if you're looking for a creative solution and you'd like to get connected with any of these, my email will pop up here at the end, or connect with me through LinkedIn, or just come up afterwards and let me know what you're thinking. So from here, I'd certainly like to open it up to any questions. Anybody want to share comments of what their experience has been like, or any other solutions that they've encountered? Yes.
I'd just like to share with the group, I'm on the board of Plumlee Industries, which is right down the street at 141 in Manchester. We have 411 people with very special needs. Those people can do jobs that some of you cannot do. And I'd just like to echo the thought that if you have any disassembly, relay, packaging, talk to them, BCI. There are other Canterbury here in town, JSI in the south. So there's really a viable option.
Thank you. Lafayette, I can't remember who I worked with there in the past, but I did some work with you guys at one time. It's a great, great organization. And even to tour a place like that is very inspirational. So thank you. What was your name again?
Don.
Don. All right, so see Don afterwards. All right, anyone else? Yes?
When a lot of these unskilled or unskilled ways of getting to the workforce, there's a lot of these programs that are available, on-the-job training programs that are available in the county. They can reimburse training fees up to 50%. And then on top of the state, a lot of this same ways depending on their income qualify for federal tax credits as well for work opportunity tax credits.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, I've heard of that one as well. Yeah, Larry.
Jeff Larry Weiss. I work primarily with manufacturing companies, and what a lot of them are looking at is automation and being very open to and being just aware of, whether it's trade journals, any process that's repetitive, and in some ways it's almost like an outsourcing effort, but to take things and, especially if you're doing any CNC type processes or just repetitive computer processes, there are some pretty creative companies that have formed in the last 18 months. And can automate processes that, a lot of this helps with the entry level and the basic skills, but there's a couple companies that I'm aware of that have actually taken higher level, I'll say technical roles, have been able to automate those, where instead of having to have 1 or 2 CNC operators doing a task, they've actually, whether it's AI or machine learning, they basically have automated that task, that 90% of the work gets set up within the cloud and then comes back to you, so you have 1 operator instead of 3.
Yep. More of that automation we kind of talked about earlier too. So great example. Trying to take out, I guess, some of the more redundant tasks that are in some of the processes that we know today. How do we take those out? It's great. Yes?
How important is the higher education, like the college graduates coming into the market? Because I'm finding that people have a lot of debt from, college that they have to pay for. And right now, I understand that the manufacturers need workers right now, but, if you have college kids, age kids, you send them to college,
I won't touch that one. I don't know. I think everybody's going to have a preference there. I would say for me, and I'm an operations guy, and try to keep it pretty simple, but I think it depends on what you're doing and what the expectations are of the role. If there are things that you feel really strongly about for the role itself and expectations of the role that require that higher education, absolutely, you're going to need it. But if it's more about attitude, effort, and ability, I think maybe you may have to choose or try both. All right, anyone else? Yes?
What's your take on businesses' capabilities in using these kind of creative solutions, what there are in the market, the ones that you mentioned, and a few of them to be heard here? Bit of a background, because my experience is that still very often, many businesses, maybe especially manufacturing, they're kind of fixed on the idea of having labor working as an FTE. That's the way of having people working for this facility. They need to be FTEs. And as we kind of went through the talk about what's happening in the market, I feel that that's not necessarily the world where we are going back to. It's this post-COVID world where this kind of flexibility is kind of pretty tightly knit in, and that requires that businesses are more and more willing to use all these kind of creative and flexible solutions, not just as a kind of a patch to fix something that's broken at the moment, like putting a patch on it, but instead in a strategic way, in a way that they can build actually strategically functional operations that really have a future. So what's your take on that? Sorry for the long background, but had to go over a rant, but what's your take on that? Their abilities to do that?
Yeah, I think it's going to change a lot in 2023. I do think you're going to have to be more creative. There's a little bit of a transition that we're going through right now at the company that I work at. It can't just be traditional. Right, and in that same thought of an FTE is 8 hours or whatever you want to call it, and it's a person who's doing this job. I think a lot of I think what I kind of bring up what Larry was talking about. We talked about it earlier. Automation and technology. We're going to have to find a way to start unwinding some of those FTEs with augmented automation and technology. I really do. What else do you do? There's another one. I think there are a lot of professional services out there too that can augment your business And I would suggest that there are other people who are experts at that. Go to them. And by that, I mean outsource. If you want to outsource, if you're in a bind for human resource, talent, knowledge, expertise, whatever that might be, you can outsource that. You can outsource certain things, and you may have to just redeploy your talent to do something else. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think it's going to continue to be traditional. There will be multiple approaches to that in 2023. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's great. We could probably share 1,000 ideas here, but it is really, hey, if I have an FTE today, how do I backfill that with 2 or 3 part-time? I would share one quick story, and I got this from a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. Chick-fil-A was working on a retention idea, and they didn't necessarily have it figured out, but they were listening, and their employee said, I want to work, I don't know, I think it was they were going to work 3 12-hour days and be full-time. And they were successful at doing that, and they just said, well, they're only open 6 days a week, Chick-fil-A. So they started hiring people who would work 3 12-hour shifts, and then they were off for 4. 100% retention so far. So I think it just goes to show if you have, you do. I just think you're going to have to think outside the box in 2023.
What is your hiring retention policy? Like, what are you guys working on specifically that you're doing this year?
Well, a lot of the things we talked about. Since I've been there, and I think it's been a part of Merric long before me, is a lot of promotion from within. Merric in that type of industry is really heavy on project management. It's heavy on engineering, CAD design. Most of those skills are well developed from people who are coming from actually performing the process. So they've had a good history of promoting and creating those career paths. So we continue to do that. I think hiring the right way is always a big one. So we are working on that right now. And I would say we're not doing it all right now. That's why I feel pretty strongly about this, but we're working towards that. That was part of the rollout that we had this past week and yesterday. Anyone else? All right, great questions. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah,
Nice job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for being here. We really appreciate it. So, I want to get a picture of a still of the crowd so that we can post that up on social media. So the standing joke is if you're a felon or someone who is dodging the law or something like that, just duck your head, please. All right, everybody look up here and smile. Awesome. I didn't see anyone duck their head, so that's a really good sign. All right, our next event is March 3rd. So if you are following along, we usually meet the second Friday of odd months, but we're going to meet a little bit earlier in March, because we want to make sure that there's no conflicts with spring breaks and things like that. So Friday, March 3rd is the first Friday. We're going to hear about fraud. Most businesses have either experienced fraud or have fraud that they don't know about going on. So we're going to hear from a police officer and a fraud investigator about how to detect and what to do about fraud when that comes along. There are feedback forms on your tables. If you could please fill those out, those are very important for us as to know what you would like to hear next and where to go from here. And then from there, we want to have you throw away your trash. There's recycle bins in the openings. Please grab a cup of coffee on the way out. Sorry for the mix up there, folks, but thank you for being there. Thanks again for Jeff.
Yep, thank you. Yeah.